and it's a night for our webinar, and I have a very, very special guest tonight, and this is a really hot subject, certainly one that is close to my tinnitus heart, that's for sure. We have welcoming Dr. Lindsay Browning, who is a chartered psychologist, a neuroscientist, author and sleep expert. Dr. Browning is passionate about helping people to improve their sleep, since sleep is vital for so many aspects of our health and well-being. When you don't get enough sleep and feel tired, you won't be the best version of you. Dr. Browning has degrees in neuroscience and psychology and a doctorate from the University of Oxford, where Dr. Browning investigated the relationship between worry and insomnia. When she received her doctorate, she realized that there was a desperate need for help for people suffering from insomnia and founded Trouble Sleeping. Please welcome Dr. Lindsay Browning. Thanks so much for coming here. Have I missed some things out? Would you like to also explain a bit about your background, please, Lindsay?
Sure. That was a long introduction. It was very impressive. Yeah, so I'm a psychologist. I'm a chartered psychologist, and in my day-to-day life, I help individuals with their sleeping problems, and also work with companies and the NHS and the police and charities to offer sort of sleep advice, wellbeing coaching, and shift work advice. So yeah, my entire role is helping people with their sleep.
That's fantastic. And what would you say really in terms of, I know that when I was struggling with tinnitus in the early days, I noticed that for me, sleep was so prevalent that I got the right amount of sleep, but it was so difficult. So what would you say to start with somebody who, for example, me 15 years ago would come into your office and you know, I would be saying, I've got really bad tinnitus, I've got a hypersensitivity to sound, I'm really struggling. Please, can you help me? How do we sort out my sleep pattern? Because inevitably it goes completely chaotic, and it was really difficult to get any kind of sleep, let alone even 2 hours of quality sleep. What would you kind of advise to start with, please?
Yeah, so well, as soon as you get tinnitus, like the first time, it probably associated with not only the annoyance and the frustration of the sound, but also the psychological, the worry and the stress about having some new condition. So whenever anyone's faced with a new stress, then they're going to have some anxiety alongside that, like if you have a cancer diagnosis or you go through a relationship issue or any critical stress. So there's that aspect to it. So you're likely to be more anxious and having trouble sleeping anyway. And then added on to that, you've got the fact that the tinnitus, the sound, when you're trying to sleep, is going to be heightened. It's going to, when you lie down in bed and there's silence, that's when you might have been distracted from hearing it, but then suddenly that's all you can hear. And the more tired you get and the more frustrated you get, the more you can hear that sound, the more frustrated and anxious you get, the harder it is to sleep, and it just becomes this vicious cycle. So what we have to do is to understand the relationship mainly between anxiety and sleep. And the more anxious we get, the harder sleep is going to be. So it's all about trying to take that pressure off and finding ways to relax. You know, obviously there isn't, unfortunately, a magical switch to turn that sound off, but what we have to do is find ways to distract ourselves and relax so that that doesn't become part of this sort of like negative spiral, making everything worse and worse and worse.
Would you say then in that respect, would you say sometimes even preparing the bedroom scene, you know, maybe like an hour or 2 hours before you go for your bedtime, would that be important? Is that something that you would discuss with tinnitus patients primarily? I know for me, trying to set that scene is really important. I still do it now. It's like a habit I haven't broken. It's a nice routine. So it would be even having the glass of water, the setting the music right, the sound therapy, having the window open. Would you be looking at things like that, Dr.?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's when people start to struggle with their sleep or start to worry about it, they'll learn about sleep hygiene. And there's lots of really good information there, but they're also, we can start to take it too far. So, part of good sleep hygiene is to have a wind down time before bed. Because if you're going from 100 miles an hour and then you've been working, busy, and then you turn the lights off to go to sleep, you can't just shift your state of mind from busy stress to sleep immediately. So setting that environment gives you a bit of time to wind down, to move from busy stress into sleep mode. What we don't want to do is to make that too long. So I know clients who sort of start the bedtime routine, as it were, at 6, and then they're spending hours and hours and hours before bed, making sure they're not watching anything too interesting on television, making sure all the lighting is really dim. They're focusing on sleep way before bedtime. And that's not helpful, because then you're taking something that would be good, but taking it to the extreme, so it starts to become a problem. Because if you spend your entire evening planning for sleep, then of course the pressure on you to try to sleep later is going to be really extreme. But yeah, absolutely, it's really important before bed to make sure that your bedroom is a relaxing, calming place. So in an ideal world, we want your bedroom to be a place just for sleep and sex, nothing else. So our bedroom should be a haven for sleep. And that's why we sleep well in hotel rooms often, because they are, they're really calming, they're really well designed, they're sleek and minimalistic, and their entire purpose is for sleep. But in our real lives, our bedrooms can often be our office as well. They could be our TV room, they could be our gym. You might have an exercise machine in the bedroom. And then when you're going to sleep, your brain, it's really hard for it to calm down and shift, because it's used to that your bedroom is a place for watching TV and doing some work. And when you're lying down trying to go to sleep, as well as being distracted by the annoying tinnitus noise, you're also going to be thinking, oh yeah, I really should have finished that project that I was going to do, or I really should, I didn't do any exercise today, oh, I really should get on the exercise bike and do some of that. So if you can use your bedroom just for sleep and sex, brilliant. But if you're not a multimillionaire and you don't have multiple offices in your house and a separate gym, and you're a real person, okay, it's got to double up. So in which case, just make sure that you've tidied up your desk so you don't have piles of paperwork, and if you have an exercise machine in your bedroom, maybe just put a throw over it, just so you're not looking at it and being constantly reminded of what you should have done. And those things will start to help calm your brain down as well.
That's fantastic. That's great advice. How do you manage and recognize sleep disorders, Lindsay? How do you interpret those differences?
Well, there are all sorts of different sleep disorders. So insomnia, it's not just I can't sleep at all. Insomnia is when you either have trouble falling asleep, so statistically taking more than 30 minutes to fall asleep, say 3 or more nights a week, or being awake for more than 30 minutes in the middle of the night, or waking up more than 30 minutes earlier than your ideal waking time. But insomnia is one of many sleep disorders. So there's sleep apnea, where people can stop breathing during the night. And that's really very common and very underdiagnosed. And it's a very serious issue. So if you're watching this and you know that you snore, people have told you that you snore, and maybe your partner said, oh, you stop breathing during the night, and they give you a nudge, and or they'll say, oh, I love it, sometimes you stop snoring for a bit and then you take a big gasp and you start snoring again, but I love those little windows when you're silent. That's those apneas, when you actually are stopping breathing. And that sleep apnea is actually very dangerous. It puts a huge strain on your heart, and you might think that you've slept for 9 hours during the night, but actually you were woken up so many times, because every time you stop breathing, your brain has to wake you up to take a breath and you go back to sleep again. It puts a really big strain on your heart. Then you've got things like narcolepsy, which is fascinating, which is where you just fall asleep during the day without intending to. It's often in movies as quite a comical thing, but actually it's devastating. You can't drive. The only treatment is basically amphetamines. It's not a good thing to have. There's parasomnias, which are sleepwalking, sleep talking, sleep paralysis, which is where people wake up in the night and they feel paralyzed if they're unable to move. So they'll wake up, open their eyes, but feel like they're literally paralyzed. And it's the most scary, everyone reports being petrified. And this is fascinating sleep disorder, because across the globe, people report seeing a scary figure at the foot of the bed. And they'll say that they're paralyzed, and then they'll see a witch at the bottom of the bed, or the devil, or the Grim Reaper, or a ghost. And if you look back hundreds of years across all societies all over the globe, everyone reports the same thing. And I think it's fascinating because even alien abduction reports can often be attributed to sleep apnea. To sleep paralysis, because someone wakes up, they'll say, "Oh, I think there was an alien in my room and he paralyzed me in the middle of the night." And what they're describing is sleep paralysis, which is, if you don't know what it is, it's absolutely very scary. And people can think they're having a psychotic episode, or there's so many sleep issues. But I treat insomnia, which is caused by anxiety, sleep behaviors that aren't helping you sleep. And then there's this whole other host of medical sleep issues as well.
That's fantastic. What a great answer. I suspect with insomnia, I would suspect that we all really will suffer that from time to time. I know certainly when I had tinnitus, and I still have it, but when it was at its worst, I certainly found sleep very, very difficult. I was only snatching at sleep, and quite often I'd have to get out from my lack of sleep and just go for a walk in the middle of the night to try and bathe in some sort of different reality. Because really, when you're really in the throes of tinnitus, it's really, really exasperating, very difficult to manage. And even just being away, at least being in some sort of fantasy land, even if it was outside in the dark, just walking, was really useful to me. And at least it made me so tired I could at least grab a few winks and get some sleep when I kind of really, really needed it. But certainly sleep for me now, even when the tinnitus spikes, and it might be that it's quite loud, I don't really seem to have too much problem with sleep. It may be because I'm 52, so maybe as I get older, maybe I've worked a few more things out. Maybe the issues that I had in my 20s and early 30s, because they were quite tumultuous, really. I think there was a lot of things going on, career, lifestyle, all of those things, I think, add to stress, possibly. Certainly, I remember going to the doctors, which is coinciding with something you said earlier, which was about anxiety. And I remember the doctors about 15 years ago suggested and gave me a packet of sleeping tablets. I remember, I think it was diazepam. I don't know if they are sleeping tablets, but I've still kept the packet, actually. I've still got it as a kind of a landmark, because I only took 2 or 3 of them, I think, because it just bought me a tiny bit of time. But I realized that little half an hour of time was kind of, it was quite pleasant, but at the same time I knew that it wasn't really going to be the solution, not long term. So I kind of kept it, and I keep it even when I go away. So when I tour, I always take this little box with me. I wouldn't probably want to take them anyway. It's probably too old now. They're about 15 years old, but it's there as a kind of as a little landmark, I think. So getting into that question, would you recommend sleeping pills?
There's a question in the chat box, actually, from someone asking that question. Well, I'm a psychologist, and my aim is to help people to sleep without needing medication. And also the NICE guidelines, as in the National Institute of Clinical Excellence for the NHS, they suggest that the first line of intervention for insomnia should be CBT-I, which is Cognitive Behavioural Therapy for Insomnia, which is the psychological intervention that I do, that should be done ahead of sleeping pills. Now, sleeping pills, modern day sleeping pills, so diazepam is more of just an anti-anxiety drug. It's not, and it will help you to sleep because you'll feel relaxed, but it's not actually a sleeping pill. So sleeping pills, the modern ones, are called the Z drugs, like Zopiclone, and they knock you out. But the trouble with sleeping pills is that you become tolerant to them extremely quickly. So, if I took a sleeping pill like Zopiclone every day for a week, and then I didn't take one on the last day, I'd have huge rebound insomnia, because my brain will have, in a short space of time, become dependent on the sleeping pill, and without it, I wouldn't be able to sleep at all, or I'd have huge problems with sleeping. And then you get into a situation as a user of sleeping pills that you think, well, I need the sleeping pills because look what happens when I stop taking them. I don't sleep at all. But actually it's the rebound effect of not having the pill. A bit like if you were a heavy smoker and you stop smoking, you get the nicotine withdrawal. But sleeping pills, they're not a long-term solution is what I'm saying, because you get this tolerance very quickly to them, and then you get the rebound insomnia. But they can be helpful in the short term just to get you over a crisis point. And a little bit like you said with the diazepam, just having a couple of tablets, it just gives you a night where you think, well, I had terrible 3 nights was awful, but I had this one night of good sleep, so I feel like I can cope again. I feel like I can face the world, and then that makes you more relaxed, so that then the pressure isn't on you having to sleep the next night, and then you're likely to sleep better. So there's a time and a place for sleeping pills. It's not a long-term solution, but they can be very helpful in the short term, especially if you're at a crisis point. I see a lot of clients who are really, I would say, at crisis point with their sleep.
Yeah, I bet I can totally imagine. It's really interesting what you were saying. I mean, I'm not particularly proud of it, but what I ended up doing was I, rather than take that for the entire year, I remember it was for a whole year, almost to the day, in 2008, what I did was I drank a bottle of wine every day. Every night. And that was just my way of being able to give myself space. I'm not saying that that's what anybody should do, but that's how I treated it. But and then after a year, it was like, I don't drink alcohol at all these days, and I wasn't before that. It was like, that's kind of just what I went to. It's when my mind was just saying, look, don't do the diazepam, do something just as bad.
It's really common. People self-medicate with alcohol all the time. Gosh, that was a quick question. There are a couple of comments, people saying they're having trouble hearing. If someone could let us know if it's any better, or if you can hear or can't hear. But yeah, self-medicating with alcohol is really common, because alcohol is a sedative, which means it helps you to fall asleep or pass out. But the trouble is, alcohol disrupts the quality of your sleep. So yes, you drink a bottle of wine or a couple of shots of brandy and you fall asleep, but then, oh, thank you, someone said the sound good, great. But then your sleep quality is so disrupted that although you've fallen asleep, actually you get a disrupted night's sleep. And if you want to talk about, if you like to know the specifics of it, so alcohol really interferes with REM sleep. So when we go to sleep, we have sleep cycles. We have deep sleep, more light sleep, deep sleep, dreaming sleep, or REM sleep, light sleep, deep sleep, dreaming sleep, repeating across the night. And at the beginning of the night, we tend to have more deep sleep. And as the night goes on, we get more and more dreaming sleep. And alcohol really disrupts dreaming sleep, which means for the first couple of sleep cycles, there isn't a lot of dreaming sleep. So alcohol doesn't really affect your sleep. But then in the following hours, you keep waking up. And that's what you get that, if you've ever got drunk, you pass out for 2-3 hours and then you'll wake up constantly for the rest of the night. That's because the alcohol is stopping you from staying in REM sleep. So you don't get a good quality night's sleep. So I never recommend alcohol, especially if your sleeping issue is sleep maintenance. If you're struggling to stay asleep, alcohol is not your friend, basically.
I totally agree. You have to sort of find out the hard way. You're absolutely right, Lindsay. I've noticed that even sort of not drinking anything and just adopting just much more of a lifestyle of drinking good quality water and eating well, exercising, and being in a good space is it's just worked wonders for tinnitus anyhow. And it's great for sleep. I mean, I probably sleep about 6 or 7 hours every night, and I really enjoy it. I like that time. It's good. I'll put a little podcast on or something, on my sound therapy, and it's just, I love it. I really enjoy that time of the day, and I love the morning. So it's just finding happiness with all of those things that you're kind of doing in your life. I think for me, certainly doing this tinnitus project and doing music and doing things that I really love, they're devotional, certainly makes me feel really great. And that really helps, the whole thing really helps tinnitus, that's for sure. I've got some questions actually now that are starting to come in. So I'd love to ask them to you,
Sure.
Lindsay. Here we go. So I was using sleep headphone stroke mask if I woke up early. Now finding I need it to get to sleep. Any issues with this, please?
So this is really common. Basically, if you use a prompt to help for you to go back to sleep again in the night, then you'll get used to needing that to fall asleep. So normally for non-tinnitus patients, I would say, try to wean yourself off that. Often I'll have people who start listening to, if they wake up in the early hours, they'll listen to a podcast, or they'll start put the TV on, or that kind of thing, listen to an audiobook, and then they'll start to need to have that to go to sleep at the start of the night. However, if you have tinnitus and having some kind of distraction or audio distraction is important, it's fine. There isn't a perfect way you have to sleep. If you're finding that you can fall asleep with a particular circumstance, situation, then go for it. That I'm a huge believer in, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So yeah, if you find that it's becoming a problem, and that listening to these podcasts or whatever you said that you were listening to is actually making it harder to fall asleep, yeah, then I would say wean it off. But if it's not, then it's not a problem for you to go to sleep listening to a sleep story or some sounds at all. But if you do that, then obviously when you wake up in the night, you probably will need that again to go back to sleep again. Not the end of the world. If it works, then I wouldn't worry about it.
That's fantastic. Would you say that there is a recommended amount of hours of sleep, Lindsay? What would you say it would be?
So for an adult, there's a 2015 national sort of. So sorry, I lost the ability to speak today. there's some research that's shown that for an 18 to 65-year-old, we should be getting, for ideal health benefits, somewhere between 7 and 9 hours sleep regularly. So that means getting 10 hours sleep at the weekend and then making do with 5 hours the rest of the week doesn't count. It's about getting the right amount of sleep most nights. So this 7 to 9 hour window is kind of where the science shows we get the most benefits. However, other studies have shown that the reality is that 3/4 of British people get 6.5 hours sleep or less. So although we know that we should ideally get between 7 and 9, the reality is people get a bit less. It's a continuum. It's a little bit like, we know we should have 5 fruit and veg a day. We know that. I'm sure that most people don't get 5 fruit and veg a day, but we know we should. So sleep is like that. And it's a continuum. So if you're just getting slightly below, like you said, you're getting sort of 6.5, that's within the normal realms. I wouldn't be that worried about that. If you were getting 5, 4, that's probably not enough. And if you're getting lots more than 9 hours sleep a night, then that to me would suggest that the sleep quality that you're getting when you're asleep isn't good enough. And that's where we might come back to that sleep apnea, when you stop breathing during the night, is often a common cause. If someone sleeps for hours and hours and hours, but they still could nap in the afternoon and they still feel tired. Because actually, even though you're sleeping for 10 hours, you're not actually getting the quality sleep because you keep waking up.
That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, I've got another one that's just come in, and I'm up 2 or 3 times in the night to the toilet. This makes me exhausted as tinnitus kicks in. Please, how do I manage it?
Okay,
Thank you.
we have, like I said, we have these sleep cycles. So about every 90 minutes, we'll go from light sleep, deep sleep to dreaming sleep. And then between each sleep cycle, we'll wake up. Everyone does. Everyone watching this wakes up at least 4 or 5 times every night. But you won't remember or realize that you've woken up unless you've been awake for at least a couple of minutes, because it takes that time for our brain to kind of be aware enough and then store that memory of waking up into long-term memory storage. So the next morning, you can remember you woke up. Now, when we're 21, often these awakenings are so short that we don't wake up at all, or we don't think we've woken up. And then as we get older, or if there's something else going on, like you have tinnitus, so you have, when you wake up, you're more awake and you're awake for a little bit longer, then you start to realize that you've woken up. And the trouble there is that you can start to worry that your sleep is fragmented because your sleep is broken. Now, in reality, these awakenings, as long as they're quite short, they're not they're not messing up your sleep, because these sleep cycles are individual anyway. So as long as you're waking up for a short amount of time, it's not the end of the world. Most people, like waking up once a night to go to the loo, is completely normal. If you think about it, during the day, you know, how often do you go to the toilet during the day? It's probably every couple of hours. 2 to 3 hours is normal. So if you've been asleep for 2 to 3 hours, then if you wake up enough to realize that you're awake, your brain is just going to monitor how am I doing, any pains, it'll listen to the sound, yeah, you can hear that annoying sound, get your bladder, oh, it's a bit full, I need the loo. It's not needing the toilet most of the time that wakes you up. It's just that you're awake enough to realize that you need the toilet. Now, if you're waking up 2 to 3 times, that's on the more frequent side. So I'd want to check with your doctor, you know, is there something going on there? Maybe you have a UTI, because, you know, going to the toilet for 3 times every night is, you know, isn't normal. It's not horrendous, but it's like pushing it. So I'd want to get that checked out. But yeah, if you're just waking up once to go to the loo, or you are aware that you've woken up a couple of times in the night, as long as it's just for a short amount of time and you go back to sleep again, that's not the end of the world. Now, when you have tinnitus and those awakenings, rather than being short, they become longer because you're aware of the annoying sound and you start to get frustrated. That's why we could, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about some things that you can do to help you get back to sleep again quicker, like some relaxation techniques and that kind of thing.
Fantastic. One thing that's come up, and it's just a question that actually I have, and it's something that we found has been really catastrophic amongst the tinnitus community, particularly, is the messaging and the kind of quite fear-based messaging that's been going on in terms of, you know, isolation and blah, blah, blah. And it's been really affecting the anxiety amongst people with tinnitus. And I've noticed that there's been also a real rise, not just in the tinnitus, but in the hypersensitivity of sound. So hyperacusis or hyperacusis. We've had so many people that have really been complaining from that. So how do you turn it around? Because we obviously, we want to be accountable and we want to make sure that we can listen to people's concerns, and we try and allow them to talk, and then we try and offer some advice or put them in touch with health professionals, obviously, to help them through that. But what would you do to steer them back into some kind of real pleasant equilibrium again? I mean, because I guess for me, it feels like it's very, very, it is very, very fear-based, and it puts the fear of God in these people. And it's very unnecessary to ask people to do it in that manner, I feel. And I think it's really hurting people. So how do you steer them back into equilibrium, please, Dr. Browning?
Yeah, so what I get is that you're saying that people are hypersensitive to sound and that they're getting more and more anxious and more aware.
Yeah.
So that actually, even in the non-tinnitus community, is really, really common when someone is suffering from really bad insomnia. So when someone's really struggling to sleep, they will become hyper aroused, hyper alert. And not only about sounds, you know, like the anecdote that once you have trouble sleeping, you can hear a dripping tap 3 houses away, because you're on hyper alert, because you know you need to sleep, you know it's important, and you're not sleeping well and you're really frustrated. So you're listening for anything that might be a cause for you to not sleep well. So you're listening extra hard for sounds, oh, that might keep me awake. And again, you're also paying attention to your own body. So you'll hear your own heartbeat and you'll think, oh, look, that heart's beating really fast, something wrong. Or you'll be paying attention to your breathing, or to your sensitivity of your skin, or to pain, or to the sound, the tinnitus. And it's all about that hyper arousal. So it all comes back again to that anxiety. What we have to do is to bring down the anxiety, because once you start to reduce the anxiety, then that hyper alertness, hyper arousal starts to lessen. And you mentioned to me earlier that you would get up and go for a walk.
Yeah.
And it's a very good idea to stop trying to sleep. If you're trying to sleep and it's not working, keeping trying harder and harder is the worst thing you can do, because you just get more and more frustrated. No one can sleep on demand. You know, no one can be like, right, sleep now. It's just not a thing you can do. And the harder you try, the less you're going to sleep. So if you're going to sleep and you're giving sleep a shot and it's not working, just get up, go do something else. Now, I wouldn't suggest going for a walk, just because that's physically making you more physically alert. It's, but again, it worked for you, so it doesn't matter. But as a professional, that's not the first thing I would suggest. What I would suggest would be things that are distracting and pleasant. So reading a book, watching some TV, doing some colouring, or some, doing making a picture book, or it's Christmas coming up, write some Christmas cards. Do something that will distract you from trying to sleep, and that will be positive. So maybe writing Christmas cards isn't pleasant per se, but then after you spent an hour writing them, you go back to bed, you think, well, I haven't slept, but at least I've got that done.
Yeah.
And it just gives you a restart, and you've not been just sitting there or trying to sleep. You've been doing something else, which will then calm your whole body down, calm your nervous system down, calm your mind. And then when you go back to bed, sleep will be a bit easier, and then that will become the norm. So it's a really good idea. That just lying there, paying more and more attention to everything, and getting more and more frustrated is the certain way to have a massive problem with sleep.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's a superb answer. Thank you very much. Okay, we have another one. Would you recommend meditation or other techniques to try and distract from the tinnitus around the bedtime?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a whole host of evidence to show that mindfulness, meditation is really helpful. Now, mindfulness during the day to help you just generally relax is really helpful, as well as before bed to help you be in the right frame of mind for sleep. And you could do it in bed. So certain sort of guided meditations like progressive muscle relaxation or body scan meditation can be really helpful. Have you heard of that? I don't know if people have heard of it.
I have, but I'd love you to explain that, please, just in case people out there are quite certain. That'd be brilliant.
So a progressive muscle relaxation is a kind of sort of meditation-y thing whereby you can start at the top of your head and go to the bottom, or I teach it that you start at your toes and move up. And what you're doing is you're progressively starting with your toes, you're tensing. So you start with your toes and you sort of tense your toes as if you're picking up sand between your toes, say, and hold that for a few seconds, and then gently relax your toes. And then you'd move up to your ankles, and you'd pay all of your attention and almost feel your ankles, imagine them becoming tense, and you're focusing all of your attention on your ankles, and hold that tension for a few seconds, and then relax. And then you move up to your calves, and then your knees, and then your thighs, and you slowly move up your body, muscle group by muscle group, basically tensing and relaxing. Now you can listen to guided meditations. There are those on YouTube or Headspace that walk you through this process. But generally speaking, I don't recommend that people, you're trying to sleep, oh right, great, I'll get my phone and get my headphones and start listening, because that might wake you up even more. And when you're listening to somebody guiding you through this, if you get to your shoulders and then you fall asleep, then the person's going to say, and now move on to your head and wake you up again. So what's a really good idea, what I tend to recommend, is that you find, if you wanted to contact me afterwards, I can send you a sheet that sort of walks you through it. There's a guided meditation thing in my book, or just go on YouTube, practice it a couple of times during the day, and then when you're in bed, you'll know what to do. And to be fair, it's not that hard. I mean, you can probably do it now that I've explained it. So, but the great thing is if you do it yourself, you're giving your brain something to do, to concentrate on. It's concentrating on right toes, ankles. You're doing something, you're thinking, you're taking action. You're not thinking, oh, I can hear this noise, it's really annoying, or you're not thinking about what you should be doing tomorrow. You're doing this thing, and it's physically relaxing you. It's keeping you focused on the task. And hopefully, by the end of it, you'll feel really relaxed, and you've had a break from being frustrated and you feel more relaxed, or you've got halfway through it and you fell asleep. Brilliant. It's a win-win. So yeah, progressive muscle relaxation is a great technique, and you could do that when you wake up and you maybe go to the loo, come back to bed again. You could do that at that point.
That's fantastic. I've got a question here. It's a personal one, because I know the answer, but I wanted to share this because I think a lot of people wouldn't know this. What are the stages of sleep, please, Dr. Browning?
Sure. So we have light sleep, deep sleep, and dreaming sleep, basically. So light sleep is when you first go to sleep, and light sleep is made up of like stage 1 and stage 2. So the lightest sleep is called stage 1, and then you go into stage 2 sleep. So the lightest stage 1 sleep is where you are asleep, but you're also able to pay attention to the room around you. So that's the kind of sleep where if you were in light sleep, the lightest, stage 1 sleep, and I was monitoring you, so I knew that, and I was to whisper your name next to you, which would be creepy if I was in your room, but let's pretend it's fine. I would whisper your name, you would say yes, and you would swear that you were awake, because you're in this kind of like, you're asleep, but you're able to monitor the environment. When you go into stage 2, still light sleep, you're fairly easy to wake up, but just whispering your name wouldn't wake you up. You'd have to be a little bit more woken up. And then you go into deep sleep, and deep sleep is when you're very hard to wake up. That's when you need a loud fire alarm, or you need someone to shake you, like wake up. And children have much deeper sleep than we do as adults, because deep sleep is where our body physically regenerates, and it's where we grow. We release growth hormone. So children have much deeper sleep because they're generally physically a lot more active than we are as adults, and they're growing. So you go light sleep, deep sleep, and then you go into dreaming sleep. And dreaming sleep is when your brain processes emotion and it processes learning. It's like a filing system for the brain, or overnight therapy. And if you're going through a difficult time, or a stressful time, or even just a new time, as in facing the world coronavirus pandemic new, your brain is trying to process and make sense of what's going on in your life during that dreaming sleep. And if you're faced with something, maybe you've just got tinnitus and you're really frustrated by it, and you're trying to make sense of my new normal, my new life, you might find that your dreams are more emotional and more disturbing almost, and you might find that you wake up more frequently than you did before, because your brain is processing all this stuff during your dreaming sleep. So the different stages of sleep, they go light sleep, deep sleep, dreaming sleep, light sleep across the night, and you tend to wake up in between each one. But you need all the different stages of sleep, and that's really important, because I see lots of patients, or rather I tell them not to see me, but lots of patients want to see me, because they say, Dr. Browning, I need to see you because my Fitbit told me that I'm only getting 25% deep sleep, and I need to get the whole night of deep sleep. And I say, no, you don't. That's like saying you should only eat broccoli. Well, we know broccoli is healthy, but if you only ate broccoli, you would have all sorts of deficiencies. It would be terrible. You need to have all the different food groups. So sleep is like that. You need light sleep, you need deep sleep, and you need dreaming sleep. It isn't, the name deep sleep doesn't equal good sleep. It's just one of the stages.
That's brilliant. I certainly know for me that when really I'm up against it, or there's a big problem in my life and I have to address it, almost it might be a serious meeting or something that I need to really address, I will dream the next day, and depending on the kind of outcome of the dream, it pretty much determines how it's going to go the next day. So it's almost like a prophetic nature to this dream, and it's quite positive for me to do that. It's it's like you say, you're hitting a fairly deep sleep at that point, and it's certainly a really great way of unraveling certain problems that I certainly face with music. For me, music is this wonderful puzzle, a conundrum, and I sometimes dream the music, or it might come as a kind of a vision in my sleep, and then the next day I'll act on it. So would you, I mean, this might be a different thing altogether, but I used to, I don't do it so much now, but in my 30s, I used to take a book and a pen by the side of my bed, and I would write and try and decipher actually for myself what those dreams meant for me. I don't dream much these days, although I suspect from just hearing your answer that I probably don't remember what the dream was, but I did used to try and express that dream and try and work on it and try and learn from it. So would you sometimes recommend taking even a pen and a piece of paper or something with you to bed?
As long as it's not causing you to wake up more, because when we wake up between the sleep cycles, we don't really want to have a reason to wake up even more. And that's why having a phone next to your bed can be not a good thing, because it's 3 a.m. and you wake up, you think, I'll just check my phone. And then, before you know it, you're properly awake. But having said that, a lot of creative people like composers, artists, writers, and personally myself, I have the most incredible dreams about like science fiction movie plots, and I think, wow, that would be an amazing movie. But if you don't write them down straight away, they're gone. So I would say if you feel that there's something on your mind or on your heart that you haven't quite got a handle of, then maybe writing down your dreams is going to help you see what you're really processing. It's not always as black and white as, I dreamt about my mother, therefore I'm having a problem with my mother. We tend to dream in emotion rather than facts, if that makes sense. Yeah. So there's often a more, you tend to dream, the emotion is like you're lost because you're feeling out of control in your life, rather than it being you're worrying about getting lost. And also if you're a creative person and you want to be able to capture those things, then absolutely have a dream diary to write it down. But obviously, my role as a sleep professional is to try and help people who are having trouble with their sleep. Yes. And generally speaking, writing down your dreams as soon as you wake up isn't going to be great for your sleep. But if your sleep's fine and you're just interested in them, then absolutely, I would say do that.
That's great. Thank you. We have another question here. We've got 3 actually, but coming in. So this one is cannabis a bad option if you are finding sleep hard?
So obviously, cannabis per se is illegal, so I can't recommend that. But I know that CBD oil is there aren't studies yet to say that it's helpful, but there is a lot of anecdotal evidence to say that it basically helps you to relax. And if meditation helps you relax, yoga helps you relax, nice scented candles help you relax. If CBD oil, which is legal and everything, and made correctly, if that will help you to relax, then it's obviously going to aid your sleep. But I don't recommend it as a first line intervention, because obviously I'm a scientist and I only recommend things that are proven. And mindfulness is proven to help, writing therapy is proven to help, but I'm sure that studies will come to support CBD oil. So if you want to try it, go for it, I would say. But I wouldn't say you should do that. That's going to help, because there are other things that are proven that do help that you could try instead.
Thank you. This is another one that's just come in. I have restless leg syndrome, which causes me to wake at night. This irritates my leg muscles and causes my tinnitus to spike. What advice can you give, please?
Have you had a blood test? Because restless legs can often be a sign of a iron deficiency or a ferritin deficiency. So ferritin is actually, you can test that your blood might have enough iron, but does it have enough ferritin, which is a very specific thing. So if you are struggling with restless legs, again, magnesium and vitamin B12. So iron, ferritin, magnesium, vitamin B12 are often associated. The deficiency in those causes this really frustrating sort of achy feeling and restless feeling in your legs. I would say if you haven't had a blood test, ask your GP for a blood test. It specifically asks for a ferritin blood test. And if all of those things are fine, then there are other things that you can do, like sort of with some just general good sleep hygiene can help. But if you haven't spoken to your doctor, definitely speak to your doctor, because there can be a sign that something else is going on. It's really common in pregnant women, for example, because they're giving all the iron to the baby, basically.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've got another question here. General anxiety makes me wake up with my heart racing and stomach in knots. I don't want to get up as it disturbs my husband, and then I start to hear the tinnitus if I'm sat downstairs on my own. How can I stay in bed and deal with the anxiety? Oh my word, yeah, that's I've been in a not the same situation, but certainly been there many, many, many times. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would say you could try getting out of bed quietly, going to another room, because it shouldn't disturb your husband too much. And I'd say that would be less disruptive than me saying, right, we'll sit up in bed, put the light on and start reading a book, because that's surely going to be more disruptive. I would say, getting up and going downstairs in silence, it's going to make things worse. A bit like I think I said already, doing something else in the night, like doing some colouring or watching some TV, or reading a book or listening to an audio book or listening to a podcast. Those things would be really helpful, because they would give you a break from trying to sleep when you're not succeeding to sleep. Just break that cycle, give you some distraction from the tinnitus, you not being in bed, because just lying in bed trying to stay still, it just makes things so much worse. So I would say, see if you can sneak out of bed and go to another room and put the TV on. And if you don't, if it's too loud, or put some headphones on, like some wireless headphones, and watch TV on your laptop, as long as night mode is on your laptop, because I wouldn't want the light from the screen to be too bright, because that can also interfere with sleep.
That's great. I want to be really specific, and what would be the top 3 do's and don'ts when trying to get to sleep? I know we've covered a lot of this, but what would be those fundamental 3 steps to the do's and don'ts of getting good sleep?
I'd say, firstly, anxiety. Be honest with yourself. Are you anxious at bedtime, either about sleep or about other things? Because you might be anxious at night because you're worried about your job, or you're worried about tinnitus, or you're worried about not sleeping. If there is anxiety there at nighttime, you are going to struggle to sleep. So you need to look at ways of reducing that anxiety, whether that's with some relaxation techniques, or actually just being honest with yourself about that there is a problem and doing something about it. Maybe some writing therapy during the day, or maybe even seeing a therapist, or you're worrying about your tax return. Be honest with yourself and get your tax return done, because then the anxiety is going to start lessening, because anxiety and sleep do not go together. The more anxious you are, the harder it is to sleep. So you've really got to get a handle on that. And then, like I said, second thing would be lifestyle factors. I think we haven't really touched on this, but
please do. Let's do that.
But like getting outside during the day and getting some fresh air and getting some exercise is so important. It's so important for your mental well-being, but it's also directly helpful for your sleep, because when we get bright sunshine during the day, it helps our brains to produce melatonin to help us sleep well at night. And exercise during the day helps us to have more deep sleep at night. And that deep sleep, which is the sleep where we're hard to wake from, we tend to not be awake in between the sleep cycles for as long if we have deeper sleep. So some exercise during the day outside in the sunshine, just go for a walk around the park, is going to be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And then, as we said, like a wind down time before bed is really important. Making your bed a good place to be, a relaxing place. If your bedroom is full of paperwork and you've got pictures not hung up on the wall, and they're just on the floor, and when you go to bed, your covers, your bed, your mattress is uncomfortable, and your bedroom smells horrid, you're just not going to feel relaxed and asleep. Think about wonderful hotel rooms, and even if it's just going to Asda and buying a £1 candle, there are things that you can do just to add a little bit of relaxation to your bedroom. You don't have to get the design team in to make your bedroom the whole beautiful thing. You can buy a new pair of bed covers from Tesco's for £10, and then that will make your bedroom feel a bit more just relaxing and nice. And wash your covers. So basically, light during the day, reduce anxiety, get some good light and exercise during the day, and make your bedroom a relaxing place. And I think that will really help.
That's super, absolutely super. I was thinking about, I do need to decorate, and my partner would be insisting that I need to get on with that fairly quickly. So
don't let her watch this then.
So I was having a little chuckle to myself. Okay, I've got a couple more questions, I think, Lindsay. So the first one of the last 2 would be, what would be your top tips for people who regularly wake up in the night?
Okay. Well, I would say, what are you doing to get back to sleep again? Because if you're regularly waking and then go back to sleep again, that's not a problem. It's waking up and then struggling to get back to sleep. That's the problem. So have you tried some sort of relaxation techniques? Have you tried making sure that you're doing all the right things earlier in the day? Like look at the general good sleep hygiene. That will be helpful. But if you are regularly waking up more frequently than between the sleep cycles, if you're waking up much more frequently than that, then maybe speak to somebody to find out, maybe a doctor or a sleep specialist like myself, to be like, okay, well, maybe there's something else going on, because if there is, like, if you're going to the toilet multiple times during the night, maybe there's something going on with your bladder, or maybe there's something waking you up, like sleep apnea or periodic limb movement or something like that. And if we can reduce that, then you'll sleep better. But if it's just normal awakenings and you're going back to sleep fairly quickly, you really genuinely, that isn't a problem. And it only becomes a problem when we start to worry about it. Oh no, I've woken up again. Then you're worried, then you're anxious, then you're not sleeping.
Brilliant. Okay, I've got the last question, it's just coming in. So it is, my tinnitus is so loud, it's like an alarm going off, almost impossible to sleep. I don't know if there's another section to this. I think that might be it. So I guess the question would be, how do you sleep when the tinnitus really feels so loud? I do have experienced that myself, and I would love to know what maybe you might suggest there, please, Lindsay.
Well, I would say that what we need to do is just to do all the right things, and when you're tired enough, you will sleep even through the noise. Like, people sleep in nightclubs, people sleep in war zones. It will happen, but the more anxious and frustrated you get about it, the harder it will be to sleep. So if you are finding that your tinnitus is so loud that you're in a nightclub, if you're lying there and maybe you're listening to distracting sounds, because those are very helpful, and I know that you produce your sound therapy things, I definitely recommend that. But if that isn't sufficient to mask it, then just have a break, go and do something else for a little bit, and then try and go to sleep again. Because when you're tired enough, as long as you're not more anxious than you are tired, you will sleep. Even in, if you think about it, like you're in like really noisy nightclub, or sleeping next to a train. There are lots of situations where people do sleep in very noisy environments, and it's not easy, it's not brilliant, but as long as you reduce the stress and anxiety, and you reduce the pressure on yourself to try to sleep, you're going to sleep as best as you can in that situation.
Thanks very much. Now, I'd just like to give you a massive big thank you very much on behalf of T- and the whole of the community that have been watching tonight, and also people that will be watching it and getting really useful information from this wonderful webinar on our YouTube channel. So thank you ever so much, Lindsay. It's amazing that your answers are incredible. Would you like to promote some of the things that you're doing? And there's that beautiful book that you've written, which is called Navigating Sleeplessness. Oh, brilliant. That's fantastic. Are there other things you'd like to just to bring to the attention of people?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you would like a sort of a workplace webinar, then obviously I do that all the time in companies and organizations about better sleep and that kind of thing. Or if you need any further help, feel free to to email me, go on my website. I've got a mailing list. I send a newsletter once a month. You can sign up for that. Or if you want some individual help, or even just free of charge, just send me an email and answer a question. And I also have an Instagram account, which I think you're tagged on the Tea Talks. That I'm giving away a free copy of my book actually on the Instagram page. So, but it's by the 18th of September 2021, depending when you're watching this back. So as long as it's before then, enter the competition. And if anyone wants to, would like to have a one-to-one session with myself, and all the details are on my website. Then if you mention Tea Talks, then you'll have a 10% off of the consultation fee.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Well, we'll finish tonight, and thank you very much. So next week, everybody, we've got our T- discussion, Tea with T-, and then the following month we have another webinar again. So thanks again very much, Dr. Lindsay Browning. Thank you. Lovely. Take care.